Agad, and I want to start by just paying tribute to our colleague, Deputy Aodhán Ó Ríordáin, for his immense passion, his immense and long-standing commitment to the game of football, and for the incredible eloquence of his speech earlier, his Ireland is football, football is Ireland speech, which I think everyone has commended. I want to thank colleagues across the House for supporting the motion also, and I want to welcome those who are here in the gallery joining us from local clubs and indeed our great internationals, Niall Quinn, Paddy Mulligan and Turlough O'Connor, for joining us. I want to thank members of my own local teams who joined us outside, in particular the great players Millie, Zoe, Rose and Matilda from Harold's Cross FC, and indeed Councillor Fiona Connolly and the team from Larkview FC in Kimmage. Wonderful to see so many outside with us earlier for our Labour motion. I do want to mention also one club in my own local area who would have loved to attend, who have sent strong support and have expressed to me their frustration with lack of resources for pitches and so on, but they can't be here. This is Belmont FC in Donnybrook, and very sadly, many members of Belmont are attending this morning's funeral in Donnybrook Church of Andrew O'Donnell, one of the two young men, Max Wall and Andrew O'Donnell, who tragically died in EOS just so recently. I attended Max Wall's funeral on Monday, and I just want to extend again my sympathies and condolences to his family and to the family of Andrew O'Donnell, who, as I say, are just having that funeral today. An immense loss to their communities and their families and friends. Minister, there are few sports which are so capable of lifting communities as football, and I think we've seen that expression of support for football, for soccer across the House. Many of us are old enough to remember the excitement of Italia 90, and I know we're all hopeful and optimistic that our wonderful women's team are going to capture the spirit of a nation again and lift our spirits as a nation in Australia and maybe even in New Zealand over the coming months as they play with the women's in the FIFA World Cup. We also know at local level how much football helps to bond communities. I've mentioned some of our local clubs in Dublin Bay South, but I mean there are so many great clubs in Ringsend and Irishtown, Cambridge and St Pat's, Lord Celtic and Kimmage, Terranure Rangers and Beechwood, to name just some. These are clubs that are really helping to bond groups within communities, to lift children, to lift the health and morale among children in particular. But I do want to say, Minister, that for far too long, girls' football has been the poor relation. While football has been a poor relation politically in sports in Ireland, unfortunately, we've seen girls' football in particular really disadvantaged. And I'm someone who's passionate about bringing girls forward through football. I've worked for many years at local level through Larkview and before that Inchicore Girls to bring up girls football. We've seen, however, significant barriers remain to girls and women's participation at equal level in sport. Lisa Fallon speaking passionately with us recently at an Oireachtas briefing about just how difficult it is for so many girls to participate fully in sport, particularly with the lack of facilities. We know from the FAI's report that 38% of clubs do not have women's toilets, and I do want to commend the FAI for putting forward a very strong 15-year strategy looking to grow the sport at local grassroots level, also at League of Ireland level and at international level. But I agree with their strong emphasis on developing facilities, on ensuring that there are equal changing facilities for women and girls to bring forward women and girls sport. I do welcome, Minister, your own announcement with Minister Catherine Martin at Farmley last week of the additional funding for women's sport to bring forward women's coaching, to bring forward player development, but we do need to see that investment in facilities as well, and we'll certainly be continuing to press that. We do also want to see stronger support programmes for players, including centralised contracts for young women and men. We're all mindful it's only 6 years since the women's international team had to strike to get decent facilities. As chairperson of the Gender Equality Committee, we made recommendations about making sports funding conditional on gender equality measures, and again I very much welcome your announcement on sports capital funding, and that's very important. But we do need to ensure that football is accessible to all, to children with disabilities, to LGBT children and adults. We need to see football moving to tackle racism and homophobia, and to see football being inclusive for all, with the development of all-weather pitches so everyone in every community can play. And I know that's the vision we all share, Minister. So, Minister, football's time has come. We're glad the government has not opposed our motion, but the campaign does not stop here. We in Labour will continue to work to realise that ambition for Ireland to develop one of the best women and men's leagues in the world, to make football fully accessible to all, and to break down the barriers that still hinder the participation of women and girls in the beautiful game. And I want to end by wishing Vera's Army the very best, the wonderful Abby Larkin from Ringsend, Katie McCabe and all the players on our team. We'll be rooting for you in the World Cup.
Thank you, Deputy Jed Nash.
Thank you very much, Minister. The two things that define me are my football and my class, and they're linked inextricably. One of my very first memories is of Northern Ireland against Spain in the 1982 World Cup, playing football on the street in Newfield, in a state that you'll be familiar with, being called in to watch a hugely anticipated match. I drank that match in with two very close friends with whom I grew up sharing a love of playing football. 20 years later, one of those lads played for Ireland at the 2002 World Cup. Ian Hart, 64 caps for Ireland and a Champions League semi-finalist. His brother Michael went on, as you know, to have a stellar League of Ireland career. Sadly, I didn't. But my point is this. Football fills us with hope. It fills us with dreams. It allows us to think big things for ourselves and for our communities. And my colleague Eoghan Reardon articulated so eloquently earlier on the place of football, often derided and scorned and sneered at through our state's history, the place of football in our society and in our history. And nothing that he said is wrong. For example, I played at the highest level of underage and youth football, and our Drogheda team was consistently in the top 8 of teams in the country. Yet our Christian Brothers school at the north side of Drogheda denied us the chance to bring football success to our school by refusing, until a lay principal took over, to establish our own team in our own school. But that was after we left, and that was in fact after we won a Leinster GAA title, and that was the deal. If we went and won the Leinster GAA title, would you provide us with the capacity to set up a football team? We were denied that. But thankfully in those 30 years, attitudes have changed and changed radically. And Ireland has changed, and our national policy approach to football must change too. Now, yesterday we met, the Labour Party met privately with senior FAI officials. And it was a day, of course, when a phalanx of photographers gathered outside these gates. And I mused that thankfully, and for a change, they weren't there to snap FAI officials coming in crisis, coming in to face the music before a committee here in Leinster House. Now, there's no need to have a recital of the FAI's crisis years here today. We're all too well aware of what happened. But the new FAI team, and indeed the support received from government to stabilise and reform our association, does deserve great credit. We've now moved on from a perma-crisis to a situation where our game has a world of opportunities opening up before us. We're at an inflection point when we can finally talk less about the history of Irish football and more about the future of our game in this country. And from a funding and political point of view, Minister, we need the government and the political system more generally to move away from ole, 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 ole to OK, 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 OK when it comes to backing our ambitions for our game. The FAI, as has been acknowledged across this House today, has gotten its collective act together, and it's now time that the system responded. This, Minister, has been a very good day for football, and I think a good day for politics as well, and for those who are watching in. It can be an historic day as well, and it's an historic day when we've got some high-profile senior football correspondents in the media gallery here in Leinster House, and that is very, very welcome indeed. And when we speak of the funding of football, Minister, which you did earlier on, we can't lose sight of the fact that the reality is that the sports capital grant system is not the panacea in terms of the kind of investment we need in our game. The kind of sustained investment needed to help fund the FAI plan and beyond goes frankly beyond the allocation that any government would be prepared to make to a general sports capital grant allocation, and indeed the scope of the programme. And I say this not because of any necessarily inbuilt obstacles for clubs who may be interested in applying, though we know that there are obstacles there in terms of land ownership, lease agreements and so on. But given the historic and sustained underinvestment in our game, the needs of our football infrastructure development programme is very obvious for all of us to see. The FAI plan itself, that we've referred to repeatedly here today, is not necessarily all that ambitious. Recall, and I think it's important that we recall and remember, that it's simply designed to bring us up to what we might consider to be European Union norms and standards. I'm delighted here to welcome representatives of my own club, Drogheda United Football Club. I'm from a county that's lucky to have two Premier Division League of Ireland clubs, and representatives too of Castletown Bells, a girls' team in Dundalk. I think those two clubs really represent a microcosm of where we're at in football today. And what we need, for example, Minister, over the next few years is a commitment that the Castletown Bells girls and other girls playing football in Louth across the country, when they watch the World Cup this month, that they've got the same ambitions to be at the 2033 World Cup representing this country. But let's give them the dignity of the dressing rooms that they don't have. And let's make sure as well that we learn from the mistakes of the past, making sure that, albeit Drogheda United thankfully is close to welcoming some significant investment in the club, that we learn the lessons of the past and make sure that the stadium development is not exclusively developer-led, because as you know, as a Drogheda United supporter yourself and with your family history in the club, Minister, that cannot be allowed to happen because we paid the price for that before. I welcome the fact that government is not opposing this motion. We need to build a consensus on football and the funding of football across this House, and if we can do that, that would be a good thing for this House and a good thing for the game that we all care so passionately about.
Thank you very much, Deputy Nash. So, motion regarding investment in football. Is the motion agreed? The motion is agreed. Isn't it great to have unanimity every now and again?